Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel we are taking a little look at 3 different tools to help facilitate your solo role-playing. And one of the other things I want to do this year, other than return to playing just the game that I already kind of know and that I already love, is I do want to do a long-term solo RPG campaign. I really want to create a world and a story that I can get completely lost in for a long time. I feel like I need that kind of escapism right now, and in doing so I've been kind of investigating, looking back at some of the tools that I already have and investigating some tools that I have discovered online that I haven't yet discovered. And in doing that, I found these 2 items, and these are from storyenginedeck.com. And I bought both of these with my own money. The map library, and the map library is from Roll and Play, and I bought this with my own money as well. Most of the money I make on the Dungeon Dive gets just invested right back into the channel for things for me to cover for you all. And about 2 months ago or so, a while ago, we took a look at a couple other things from Roll and Play, and I liked them enough to invest in the map library, and I think this is pretty cool too. But we took a look at the Roll and Play Fantasy Toolkit and the Roll and Play Sci-Fi Toolkit. And if you have watched that video, you will remember that I really did like this science fiction set of tools here and charts. I think this is really cool. The fantasy one is okay, but it felt a little silly to me. It's not really usually not the kind of fantasy that I like. It just wasn't really for me. The charts in here, it's okay, but I prefer other fantasy tools. But this science fiction tool set is really, really cool. Now these maps here, we'll take a look at this. This is a set of 100 different battle mats. And this is fantasy based. I would love to see something like this for science fiction, something like maybe cyberpunk, or like some weird science fantasy like Gamma World or something. I guess you could use fantasy for things like Gamma World. But let's start by taking a look at the Story Engine decks and the Deck of Worlds. These are both really cool, and I think these could be used for a number of different things. If you're a writer, you could use these to help you come up with stories. As a game master, you can use these to come up with your campaigns and your settings. And as a solo player, you can use these to help you come up with your games to run for yourself. So the Story Engine deck here, this is Create Stories in Seconds. The Story Engine deck is a set of cards for generating endless creative prompts for writers, role players, and storytellers of all stripes. It uses a simple, fast, open-ended system of drawing, rotating, and arranging 5 kinds of cards to create instant ideas for stories, characters, conflicts, encounters, items, plot hooks, and more. So those decks of cards we have agents, which are our characters. We have engines, which are motivations. We have anchors, which are objects, location, things of importance, anchors to the story. We have conflicts. Those are obstacles, consequences, dilemmas, and aspects are adjectives that describe other cards. So those can be used to modify other cards. So this is more for creating your stories and maybe your events and the things that you're trying to overcome in your games. And if you want to create worlds, you can turn to the Deck of Worlds. And the Deck of Worlds here says that the Story Engine Deck of Worlds is a set of 240 cards for creating imagined lands, local lore, and story-driven world maps that you can instantly explore through writing or roleplay. With hundreds of world-building prompts created by an international team of writers, this deck is ideal for world builders of all kinds. So there are 6 different decks of cards here. We have regions, so those are your areas. We have landmarks, and those landmarks will modify your different regions. Namesakes, these are kind of like nicknames, giving nicknames to dungeons and that kind of thing. Origins, these are significant events in the area's past. Attributes, these highlight present-day features of the area and its people. And then advents, introducing events that could change the area's future. And so these can very easily be combined together to create your landmass, to create the world that you want to explore in, and then some of the events, some of the adventures that you might have. So let's take a look at the Story Engine deck first. First of all, these both come with really nice boxes with magnet snaps, and actually the map library also does as well. Both of these have really nice packaging, and they're not very expensive. I think each one of these is about $50. The map library was the most expensive of these three, and that was $80. So the Story Engine book, the Story Engine deck does come with a guidebook, and it's pretty self-explanatory how you will use this, but this does walk you through some of the different prompts, some of the different ways that you can use these cards, some of the rules to follow, while also suggesting how to break those rules. And it also has rules to kind of play this as a multiplayer storytelling game, because like a lot of you, I'm sure I have used things like Microscope even as a multiplayer game for a session 0, so we can, around the table, we can create our world and our background for our characters and the background for our world together. And so it does kind of foster that cooperative nature of cooperative storytelling games. And so there's a lot of really good advice on how to use these. But the main way is you will kind of draw one card from each deck at random and combine them to come up with stories. And it's always good to have your composition book or your notebook or your iPad next to you, so you can write down these ideas, or maybe take a picture with your camera with your phone to remember things. But yes, so we have our deck of agent cards here. So let's give that a quick shuffle. But I've had a lot of fun with this, just set up out on my kitchen table the last couple weeks. And I haven't really used it to generate anything long lasting, but it has been fun to just sit down for a few minutes and throw some cards together and see what I come up with. And I've actually come up with some pretty interesting things that have made me think about, oh, okay, maybe I want to play in this world, or maybe I want to follow this story path. And each one of these sets does have a number of different expansions of little booster packs, not random, but little booster packs and little expansion packs that you can add to it. And I've actually, just yesterday, I went and I ordered a few. I ordered 2 or 3 for each one of these. The Story Engine deck has things that will help you focus on kind of certain subgenres. So there's one that was all about horror, and I thought that would be really cool, so I added that one. And then you can get these little packs that have cards that are specific to subgenres, such as post-apocalyptic, Wasteland Wanderers, dark crafts and ancient horrors. We have Written in Dragonfire. So the main set here really is kind of focused on, I would say, generic fantasy, typical fantasy. And so then you could add these other cards to the deck to help give it some flavor for the kind of world, the kind of story that you want to make. And these are about $7 or $9 for the small packs, and I think those come with 18 cards. And then there are 60 card decks, and I think those are about 20. So I invested in a few of those and a few of the different sub decks for the deck of worlds. But let's see if we can create a little story here. And so one option that the game has is to create or the tool, I should say, it's kind of played like a game, is to create a side table here. And those are cards, one card from each deck that we can use as to swap out. So we'll create our side table here, and we have our agent card. So we have an investigator, a scientist, a journalist, and a conspiracy theorist. Place that there. We have our engine card. We have wants to steal or steal from, wants to stop the theft of. So these are just going to be options that we can turn to. We have a cache, a camp, a bag, a disaster. Our conflict card here, but they will have to turn against a mentor, but they will have to act against a community they belong to. And finally, our last card for our side table here is gilded, traumatic, misunderstood, or revolutionary. Okay, so these are options that we can swap in and out. And there are different ways. The guidebook does tell you of different ways where you can use these to create characters. You can use these to create adventures. You can use these to create small stories or bigger stories. And these can be used with each other. So you can create a story for a location in your deck of worlds to kind of give you some of that lore that you might want to explore while you're playing. So let's create our little story here. So we have our agent. This is our main character, a teacher, a holy person, a hermit, or a messiah. Interesting. So I'm leaning towards, I think, a holy person or a hermit. You guys know I always like playing holy people, disgraced clerics, or people who are having issues with their faith in their life. I like that. That's just kind of a personal thing that I always like. Or a hermit. Let's go for a hermit. So let's see what our hermit is trying to do. A hermit wants to end a family obligation or wants to connect with a family through. So we don't need to take these literally. We could say that the hermit maybe was an old monk and they left their monastery, they left their cloister, and they maybe want to connect back with that group, or they want to end an obligation that they might have to that group. That might be more interesting. There might be some revenge going on. Maybe, let's do a holy person. The holy person, so kind of a monk, wants to end an obligation to some kind of familial ties. So maybe they've discovered something that's going on within their monastery and they don't want to be a part of that anymore. That could be interesting. Let's draw our anchor here. So this is something that the character might have to do, or something that is an anchor to this story. There's a puzzle, there's a church, a grave, or a flower. Let's say a grave. What I'm thinking of here is that the holy person, maybe they dug up something in a grave. They were maintaining their monastery's graveyard, and the grave of one of their most holy saints is actually empty. And so this person who is very important to this monastery, to their dogma, maybe actually didn't even exist. And so this holy person is starting to question their faith and their position in the monastery. They must face their deepest fear, but it will cost them the world they know. Yeah, both of those are pretty good for this story here. Because if they reveal that truth, if they reveal what's going on, it will completely disrupt the monastery's way of life. And so that could be very, very bad. And now we have some aspects. So these can be attached to any card. You can also slide these under. You can combine these in many, many different ways. So we have a long lost, a giant, a charmed, and a bitter. Let's say that the grave was actually the grave of some mythical giant. And this giant was a saint, was a divine saint that this monastery worshipped. They were very large, and it gave the monks a sense of power because they believed that they were descendants of this giant race of people who once ruled over the world, and they worshipped them. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool. Let's draw a couple other aspects to see if we can maybe modify any of these other things here. We have hardened, outgoing, miraculous, and defeated. So this holy person was defeated. Hardened, outgoing, miraculous. Let's see what we have on our sideboard here. Gilded, traumatic, misunderstood, or a revolutionary. Let's swap out that there. And this is going to be a traumatic experience for the holy person because their whole way of life could be upended because of the discovery that they have made. And I will draw, let's draw another anchor here. A ship, a shore, a compass, or an ocean. So these are all kind of nautical themed here. We could say that we could modify the place. We could say that the monastery is actually on a shore. And so the monastery exists off the coast of some region. And maybe that could relate to the giant being some kind of sea-born creature, some kind of, you know, like a divine Aquaman or something like that, or a Neptune or something like that. And let's go ahead and draw one more engine here. So it wants to erase the memory with and wants to restore the memory of. Let's see here. Wants to steal, wants to stop the theft of. So I'm going to swamp this out, and I'm going to add this as an engine here. I'm going to modify that engine, because what they were doing, this holy person, our character here, what they were doing is they were working to stop a group of grave robbers who were defiling the monastery's cemetery. And that's when they made this discovery. And so there we have a kind of a neat little story that we could play out. You know, this could be the story, the background of your character. This could be the main, maybe antagonist or protagonist outside of your main character, something that your main character is working towards. Maybe your main character is also a monk, and this holy person is the abbot. And so they have charged you with going out on a quest to kind of work through this story, to kind of discover what is actually going on. And so, yeah, I think this is pretty cool. I've come up with some pretty interesting stories, interesting characters. There are all kinds of ways to combine these cards, to tuck them under. There are ways to modify. You can add, you know, kind of an infinite number of modifiers. If you wanted to play this as a group game, as a co-op storytelling experience, activity, you know, you could hand out 2 or 3 cards from each deck to all of your players, and then you could go around in a circle and play things and modify things and come up with stories collaboratively, which is really, really cool. So that is the Story Engine deck. Now let's take a look at our deck of worlds. So this would be used for creating your worlds and your maps. And this does have ways of creating micro settings, which a micro setting will look something like this. When you're done with it, you will have a location with landmarks and different modifiers around it. And then we also have rules for combining your micro settings into a world map. And it gives you the approximate number of micro settings for a certain size world map. For instance, for a large continent, maybe 14 to 20 micro settings. For a medium-sized country, around 9 to 14 micro settings. And for a small city-sized detailed map, 5 to 7 different micro settings. And so you could lay all those out on the table, write down your micro settings that you have created, take a picture of them, and then use those for your world to create your world. So again, we have 6 different decks here. We have regions, landmarks, namesakes, origins, attributes, and advents. And again, these 2 sets can be combined to help modify each other. But let's create our sideboard here. So we will draw our region card, a valley. We have our landmark card, which is a canal or an outpost. Actually, let's give these a shuffle because I've actually seen all of those already. Let me give each one of these decks a shuffle before we draw from it. Okay, so we have a desert, and let's take our landmark deck here. And we have a sea or a statue. And our namesake, so this will kind of help us describe our region, describe our location or our setting. We have the winter of smoke, that will never die, or of blessings. And then we have our origin card. This gives us kind of a background, kind of an ancient background or historical origin. We have the origin of a famous book, grew from a single seed, the last known location of a lost expedition. Ooh, that's cool. And founded by siblings. Ooh, I like all of those. Those are cool. I really like that Origins deck. I think it adds a lot of flavor. And if I were to recommend one of these over the other, I think I like the world building a little better. I have found it to be a little more fun than the Story Engine. Our attribute, we have polluted, known for fossils, a hunting ground, or an unusual election process. All right. And then finally, we have our Advent card, so something that could change an agent of change in the future, possibly for this location. A local hero is turning out not to be who they claimed. They exaggerated their deeds, have an objectionable private life, or are an imposter. Or the climate is changing rapidly and destructively, heating up, cooling down, or changing weather patterns. Interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our little micro setting here. So this is our first micro setting for the world that we want to adventure in. We have our region card, and this is a moraine. I have no idea what a moraine is. I am going to go look that up. Okay, so a moraine is an accumulation of any unconsolidated debris, often glacial runoff. So interesting. So the land here is very unstable. Things are constantly shifting. Maybe there's quite a bit of water flow coming down from this from glacial runoff, and the land is kind of always shifting. So it's a very volatile place, I think you could say. Let's draw our landmark here. A point or a temple. A point or a temple. We have the sea or a statue on our sideboard here. So if we were going to connect this to that story we created about our monastery, we could say that the monastery was built on this moraine terrain. And so maybe what that, okay, so that's kind of interesting. So we said that that giant was from the sea, kind of like a Neptune, a sea god that they worshipped. And because they built their temple on this kind of terrain here, this kind of constantly shifting, unstable terrain, that monastery, their religion is all about fluidity. It's not specifically, it's not so confined by specific dogma. They don't have a set of rules that they always follow. They are a religion of change. They believe in the power of change, of constantly evolving and changing. That's cool. I like that. I like connecting their beliefs to the terrain that they built their temple on. Which came first? Did their beliefs come first and then they decided to build their monastery in that terrain, or were their beliefs born out of where their monastery was? I like that. Super cool. Okay, so the namesake card. So the namesake, we could attach this to either the terrain or our location, our landmark. So let's see, we have forgotten, we have at the crossroads of dyes or of rivers. Well, hey, the moraine, so the temple of rivers. Perfect. I like that, because a river is constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly kind of changing the land that it is in. So a river is always constantly flowing, but it's also changing its own landscape. And so that kind of being an agent of change is something that is very important to these monks. Okay, so let's see our origin card here. We have a former seat of a fallen empire, was once overflowing with greenery, the site of a tragic death, founded by a secret society. Let me see what we have on our sideboard here. Founded by siblings, last known location of a lost expedition, grew from a single seed, or the origins of a famous book. Let's see, which one do I want? I'm going to say that this temple was the origin of a famous book, and that is the Book of Change. Something like some kind of fantastical I Ching or something. Let's look at our attributes here. We have restrictive of free speech, private estate, unusual moss, known for places of worship. So maybe this whole moraine is known for different places of worship, but on our sideboard here, we have unusual election process, polluted, known for its fossils or its hunting ground. No, I'm going to say that this moraine is actually known for its places of worship. Because of the constantly shifting nature of this land, it is constantly bringing in new things and new beliefs. So this is a very volatile place as far as what they believe. I think systems of belief in this area don't last very long. They don't have these long traditions, perhaps. That's kind of cool. And finally, our advent, something that might change. A prophet is claiming to speak for a new god. That makes perfect sense for this terrain here. And contamination has just been discovered in the water, or possibly a local hero is turning out not to be who they claimed. I mean, that just goes right into our story, right? Because we have our that saint who was buried, but that grave is now empty. So did they ever exist in the first place? So maybe this is signifying that it is time for this particular monastery's beliefs to be changed and to morph into something else. And so we could create 3 or 4 more of these little micro settings and combine those together into a full world map that we could explore. So again, I've come up with some really interesting things using these cards. I really do like this deck of worlds. I think it's pretty great. And I did order some of the expansions for this deck of worlds. I can't remember which ones I ordered. Let me see if they're on the back here. So we have World with Magic. We have Chrome and Starlight, Light and Shadow, Frost and Fable, Sand and Story, Ancient Song. There was one that I ordered that, yes, Quests and Fool's Errands. So this is a thing that you can add to your Desk of Worlds to help create quests and help create adventures for your heroes. I did order that, and I believe I also ordered maybe that was the only one I ordered for the Deck of Worlds. Maybe all the others were for the Story Engine deck. But I have liked both of these. I have enjoyed my time with both of these enough to invest more into this system. So that was the Story Engine deck and the Deck of Worlds. And then now we'll take a real quick look. And those are from storyenginedeck.com. And now we have the map library from Roll and Play. So again, this is about $80. And this is a really nice box with a magnet snap lid here. And this is 100 different fantasy battle mats. And they are separated into different categories. We have Arctic environments, coastal and ocean, desert and savanna, forest and grassland, hills and mountains, underground spaces, urban settlements, and a full big kind of region map. And these are all folded. I believe they're about 2 feet by 1.5 feet. So you could play games of, Forbidden Psalms on these. I think would work really well, or maybe even 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, that kind of stuff. These are really, really cool. I believe these are vinyl. They are the same kind of material that I've seen used in big battle mats before. It kind of feels like really high quality paper, but I'm pretty sure these are vinyl sheets. They're very sturdy. But in the rule book here, it's not really a rule book, but we just have an overview of all of the different maps. And so if you've used some of those Loke battle mats, then you will know what to expect here. They're very similar, especially in the art. These are maybe a little bit more brightly colored, more colorful than some of the Loke battle mat stuff, but they're very similar. And I think these are really cool, because once you've created your world using the Deck of Worlds, or your locations and all of that stuff, well, then you can find the map that kind of fits with that territory, and then you have a place to play in it. And so all of these here, and this is very heavy. This is really nice. These are really high quality. These are all double-sided, and they are folded. So you will have to do a little bit of reverse folding to get them to lay straight. The world map here, so this is a world that they have created that you can play in, and we have 2 sides here. So it's the world of Marabilis. So this side here doesn't have any key locations or any named locations, but on the other side here we have some different names. And so you could play in this world, and then all of the maps will also fit in this world. So this could be the world that you play in if you just wanted to use that. But let's take a look at some examples here. So here we have an Arctic environment. So this is a winter village. So side A is a winter village. So we have some interior locations, some outdoor locations. But again, this could be used for all kinds of little narratives and solo skirmish games. And you could combine 2 next to each other to create a bigger map. And then on the other side, we have a cozy tavern in an Arctic environment. And so there's our little cozy tavern. I always love a good tavern map. Let's see here. So that was number 1. Let's go to coastal oceans. We'll take a look at one from each. So we have on side A here, we have a haunted lighthouse. Okay, so this is kind of cool. So we have our interior here, and as we work our way up the stairs, we go up to the different floors until we finally reach the roof there. That's really cool. So we have an outdoor location and then kind of a side cutaway here of the interior of that haunted lighthouse. And then on side B, ooh, this is super cool. We have the sea cave layer. So that would be a cool little dungeon. It looks like some kind of shipwreck here. Maybe some kind of expedition was looking into what was going on in this demon haunted cave here, and you have to work your way through. So a nice little dungeon map there. So again, a huge number, a big variety of all the different locations. I really like these. Let's see, so let's look at desert and savanna now. So we have our desert and savanna. So here on side A, we have a rocky canyon. So just a kind of a typical kind of little desert area there, a rocky canyon. And then on side B, oh, this is cool. We have like an oasis, a watering hole. So there we have our desert locations. And then we have our forest and grassland. So there are a number of these. We have a hag's cottage here on side A. Oh, this is really nice. I really do like a lot of the detail on these maps. I think there are things here that could trigger my imagination to come up with different adventures and different kinds of encounters I could have. Oh, this is super cool. An overgrown mansion. Oh man, I like that a lot. That is awesome. There's so much here, so much detail here that could that you could base an adventure off of. Some kind of like sigil here that somebody has drawn in on the floor. You know, what were they doing in here? There's a sarcophagus there. Very, very cool. That's one of my favorites I've seen so far. Map number 18. I'm gonna have to remember that. Each one is numbered, and so you can easily keep them in number order, and then you can look at the number that you want and just very, very quickly pull it out. So we have more forest and grassland. Here's all of our forest and grassland locations. And then we have hills and mountains. So we have an infested keep on side A. There's our infested keep. That could be used for a little dungeon crawl. And then on side B here, we have a fortified lodge with a moat around it. So you can do some kind of infiltration adventure there where you're trying to infiltrate that fortified location. We have our other hills and mountains. We have an isolated prison, suspension bridge, a celestial statue, the Eldritch Outpost, mountain pass, a volcano base. And then here we have our underground locations. So we have a Dragon Forge here on side A. There's our Dragon Forge. Maybe there's some kind of, so like dwarves would be in here creating their weapons. And then on the reverse side of that, we have mining tunnels. So those mining tunnels could be reaching into the Dragon Forge. That would be cool if those two were on separate maps, so you could combine them together. Sometimes that does happen, where you wish that side A and B were on separate maps because they would make good combinations, but I'm not going to complain too much about that. But yeah, castle dungeons, mining camps, an occult hideout. Ooh, let's look at the occult hideout. I'm always down for a good cult. Oh, that's pretty cool. They're like worshiping some kind of prismatic crystal there. And then on side B of that, we have urban houses. So here we have a little town, a little urban settlement here. That could be really fun to play in. And then, so we do have our urban settlements now. That's our final area here. So we have a daytime street, a boutique shop, a busy market, a town apothecary, a mage's townhouse, paved courtyards, a local theater, a royal palace, and bank vaults. And those are all side A. And then of course, side B, you also have other options. So yeah, this is really handy. You know, it was $80. I kind of took a chance. I wasn't sure about the quality. I wasn't sure how good the art was going to be. But I think the art is pretty cool. The colors really pop. When you do a reverse fold, these do lay pretty flat on your table. And you could also always put a piece of plexiglass over them in order to maybe protect them further. But the quality, it's very high quality, this kind of like vinyl sheeting. And so I think these will last for a long time. And it's just really handy to have 100 different battle mats right here in this case that can easily be put up on a bookshelf to be pulled out whenever you need it. Really, really cool. So I'm very happy that I bought this. I'm very happy with the Deck of Worlds, and I also enjoy the Story Engine deck, if just a little bit less than the Deck of Worlds. But I will probably make a follow-up video when I start making the world and the stories that I want to explore in my RPG when I'm playing it, and also when those expansions come in, maybe we'll take a little more of a detailed look at those as well. So, all right, let me know if you guys have used any of these and if you like them. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dungeon Dive. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.